Hey, kia ora, Marky here, back after a little gap. Nice to be back. I miss doing the videos. The gap was because good things were happening. I won't go into all the details, but it was all good stuff. So I'm a little bit croaky because I've got a cold, but that's the only cloud on the horizon right now. Things are good, and I'm excited to be talking to you this time about sex. So, Marky the Demystifier here. So this is a channel that addresses all kinds of issues where there are misconceptions or there's not much knowledge, and kind of brings enlightenment where there was darkness. That sounds like a biblical passage, doesn't it? So what I want to talk about today is returning to an old subject. This will fit with my series on neurodiversity, but it is a standalone video as well. And what I want to talk about is neurodiversity and sex. What do I mean by neurodiversity? Well, if you want a long answer, go back to my video series on neurodiversity. If you want a short answer, today I'm narrowing it down a little bit, really, because I want to talk today about ADHD, the Autistic Spectrum, and a little bit about dyspraxia, because they are the conditions that relate most to issues around sex. So things like dyslexia and dyscalculia bring all kinds of complications, but they don't really have a direct bearing on sex that I am aware of. So just gone quiet. I don't know if you're aware of the background noise. There, Jiminy Cricket there in the background accompanying me. They are cicadas, which is quite a new experience for me. I'm not used to having the chirruping of cicadas, little bugs about sort of so big. And I love them, actually. They make this, I really like the noise. It makes me feel like I'm in the tropics. It feels very exotic. They've been chirping away for quite a long time, but they've gone quiet now. They're listening. I hope you are too. So this will probably be a two-parter or more, but it's going to still be fairly short. So if you suffer, and that may be not the right word, but if you have a neurodiverse condition like Asperger's, pathological demand avoidance, anything on the autistic spectrum, attention deficit disorder, and also dyspraxia, it may have an impact on how you express your sexuality. It may have an impact on relationships, highly likely that it will have an impact on relationships, and it may make things a little bit more complicated. So what I am hoping to do is steer you away from some of the pitfalls and just give you an idea of some of the areas in which that can be affected, because knowledge, like I said, the right knowledge at the right time heals. So, where should we start? It's quite tricky to start in a way, because all the neurodiverse conditions sort of interlink so much. It's quite difficult to talk about where one begins and one ends. So a lot of the things I'll be talking about with autism, for example, will be equally relevant for ADHD, but I will try and kind of separate them a little bit just so you can make kind of sense out of things. So let's start with ADHD, because I think in a way that might be the shortest and the sweetest, apart from dyspraxia, which I haven't got that much to say about really, but we're going to touch on dyspraxia. So ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Previous videos on this, if you want to look them up. I'm using the term ADHD, but I usually put the H in brackets because not everybody with ADHD is hyperactive. One of the key things about ADHD that nobody ever talks about, the big problem with ADHD is people think it's just a thing that kids get, and people don't suddenly kind of grow out of their ADHD. It's a lifelong thing. I didn't actually have any idea that I had ADHD when I was a child, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which maybe I'll go into in another video. So ADD, as some people prefer to call it, or ADHD with the H in brackets. All forms of this involve a minimal number of dopamine receptors. Okay, so dopamine makes you feel good, and it's a neurotransmitter, so it makes your brain work, makes everything kind of work beautifully, and helps you organise and stuff like that. So not enough dopamine receptors. So the way I think of it is, imagine a colander. So if you've got kind of champagne or something really nice, okay, and it's being poured through a colander, and you're standing underneath it with your glass, hoping to get some champagne pouring through those holes. Okay, so a normal brain has got lots of holes. You get lots of champagne pouring through. If you've got ADHD, there aren't many dopamine receptors, so it's like the colander's only got 2 or 3 holes. So a tiny dribble of champagne comes through, and that's the dopamine. So you feel shit, really. Most of the time you feel flat, you're very easily bored, and you're constantly, whether you're conscious of this or not, you're constantly looking for something to increase that dopamine level to make you feel better. Okay. Now, so what that means is you still have the same, a couple of holes in the colander, but instead of somebody pouring a bottle of champagne into the colander, somebody is pouring, one of those giant kind of Magnum, whatever they're called, massive bottle of champagne in. So the more that goes in, ultimately, the more comes out. Okay, even though you haven't got so many receptors, you do kind of get a hit to a degree if you can stimulate yourself. Often in quite an extreme way. So people with ADHD crave extremes. Okay, not even necessarily good extremes. We like good extremes. We like excitement. We like change. We like difference. We like novelty. But even kind of bad things sometimes will create. Will pour more champagne into that dodgy colander. So that applies to all kinds of things, and there's a good side to this as well, because like myself with ADHD, I have drawn to some very interesting things in my life. I've done my fair share of boring jobs, but I've also done some amazing kind of unique jobs. I had some really unique experiences in life and done some amazing. I've had my hand licked by a tiger. I was an actor in a Doctor Who episode where I was a Doctor Who monster. I've done all kinds of things which I probably wouldn't have bothered to do if I had lots of dopamine, because I would have just been happy kind of doing normal shit that people do. So why am I going on about this? What has this got to do with sex? If you've got ADHD, the chances are that you will crave extremes of sex as well. Okay, and that used to, and probably still does, take the form of risk taking. So people with, I don't know what the statistic is, but people with ADHD are there's a massively higher number of people who have unprotected sex. So there's a much higher incidence of sexually transmitted diseases in the ADHD population than there is in the neurotypical population without ADHD. So, that says a lot, doesn't it, really, if you just kind of think about that. So this is where this age of modern pornography kind of comes in. And brings with it a whole load of problems. Nobody talks about this, but there is an epidemic going on at the moment among mainly men. It tends to be men who are becoming, for want of a better word, dependent upon pornography. And I'll link you to another video on that. I'm going to do more videos on this. I'm going to do some videos around sex and porn and all that kind of thing. So the advent of high-speed internet pornography is actually literally changing people's brain structure and brain function. Okay, because the speed of it actually creates a stimulation that has never actually happened to humankind before. Okay, so once people who've been sort of very heavily exposed to internet pornography, it actually makes a physical change in the brain, not for the better, unfortunately. So the negative sides of it, there's twofold really. There's probably more other additional symptoms, but the two killers. The first one is your ability to enjoy other things will diminish. So your ability to enjoy your favourite food, or a sunset, or a walk, or spending time with friends will diminish. and you will, one of the things that's happening more and more is guys lose the ability to become aroused when they're with a partner. Because partners, you know, sex with a partner is fantastic, but it can't match what goes on, what fires up in the brain when somebody's looking at pornography. And the thing about the pornography, it's not any pornography, it's internet pornography, and it's to do with the speed and the amount of images that you can go through, and the variation in images that you can go through. Okay, so this is affecting neurotypical guys big time. No one's talking about it. I'm going to be shooting more videos on this because this is a huge problem. The other side of it is, if you have ADHD, this is going to hit you. You're going to be so much more vulnerable to this. People with ADHD are more likely to suffer with addictions of any kind. So the addicted population, alcoholics, drug addicts, gambling addicts, whatever it might be, there's a higher incidence of people with ADHD among those populations. And also people with ADHD can be kind of pseudo addicts. So I've had some addictive tendencies in my past. And I've kind of used 12-step groups, similar to the video on 12-step groups, to address some of those. But I never kind of felt that and this can, for a lot of people, this can be a symptom of denial. I don't think it was in my case. I never quite identified with the people that were also recovering alongside me. And that was because there was something slightly less intense about my own addictive processes. And I call them pseudo-addictions. And I'm able to keep them in check without having to do and remain in a full time or full-blown 12-step program. So ADHD will make you appear like an addict, and in some cases you will be, you know, as people with ADHD are more likely to be full-blown addicts. And we'll probably do more videos on addiction and what that means. So I'm going to pause the video for now, and we're going to go into part 2 because I have to get these videos short to upload them. So stay with me, don't go away. Part 2 is coming in very, very soon.